The Bullies knocked over a girl in a wheelchair. 30 minutes later, a black girl defeated them in front of the whole school. It was a breezy Thursday morning at Jefferson Middle School in Birmingham, Alabama. The sun rose steady and bright, casting long shadows over the worn asphalt of the parking lot where school buses groaned to a halt. Students poured out in a familiar rush, buzzing with conversations, clutching phones, backpacks slung low, and eyes scanning for their friends. It was the usual organized chaos of the first bell. But for 13-year-old Trinity Hayes, the day didn't start with chatter or confidence. She sat quietly by the flagpole, watching as students moved around her like she was furniture. Trinity was small for her age, soft-spoken, and used to being overlooked until she wasn't. She was also one of only 3 students at Jefferson who used a wheelchair. Born with spina bifida, Trinity had never known a life without wheels under her. But that never kept her from smiling. Her eyes were bright, her answers in class always thoughtful, and she had a laugh that could warm a room. Still, that didn't stop kids like Camden Brooks from treating her like she was less than. Camden, an 8th grade linebacker, tall, smug, and from a family whose name was etched into the school gym, didn't like people who didn't fit the mold. He didn't say it out loud, he didn't have to. The jokes, the side eyes, the moments when he blocked her path in the hallway or mimicked the squeak of her wheels in class. That said enough. That morning, Trinity was trying to get into the school when it happened. She was just a few feet from the front ramp when Camden and 2 of his sidekicks, Hunter and Mike, stepped in front of her. They didn't speak at first, they just stood, arms folded, looking down with sneers like they were staring at something broken. Hunter reached out and flicked the rim of her wheelchair. "You ever think about installing nitro boosters on this thing?" he asked, laughing. Trinity's fingers gripped the wheels. "Come on," Camden said, stepping forward. "Like, let's clear a path." But instead of stepping aside, he bent down and grabbed the front of her chair. In one motion, he tilted it backward just enough to send her flailing. Trinity's arm shot out, trying to brace herself as the chair teetered and fell. She landed on her side with a thud that seemed to pause the whole front entrance for a second. The world held its breath. Then came the laughter. A few kids covered their mouths, others looked away, uncomfortable. But no one moved. Trinity lay still, her backpack half off her shoulder, books scattered. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just stared at the sky and whispered something to herself that only she could hear. That was when someone did move. Amir had just stepped off bus 12. She saw the tail end of it, the fall, the laughter, and Camden's stupid grin as he high-fived Mike. Her fist clenched, and before she even realized it, she was pushing through the crowd. Amir wasn't loud. She wasn't a class president or a straight A student, but she had something else. A quiet fire that people only notice when it started burning. She knelt beside Trinity, helped her sit up, and checked her elbow. "You okay?" Trinity nodded once, her lips pressed tight. Amir looked up. "Hey." Her voice cracked through the silence like thunder. "You think that's funny?" Camden turned. "Mind your business." Amir stood slowly, straightening to her full height, not tall, but enough. "It is my business." The crowd started to shift now, students gathering like moths to a flame. Camden smirked. "What, you gonna lecture me? What are you, her babysitter?" Amir didn't answer. She stepped forward, reached down, and helped Trinity back into her chair. The hallway monitor on duty finally jogged over late, as always, asking what had happened. But no one said a word. The boys melted into the crowd. And the scene ended not with resolution but with tension thick as smoke. But the story wasn't over. What Camden and the others didn't know was that the school's annual Unity Challenge event was scheduled for later that day. It was part of a statewide initiative to promote inclusion, with a field day of team-building games and activities designed to bring students together. Everyone would be watching: students, teachers, even parents. That's when Amir got an idea. During homeroom, she walked up to Miss Carter and said, "I want to compete this afternoon. I want Camden on my team." Miss Carter blinked. "You sure about that?" Amir nodded. "Positive." By noon, the heat had risen and the field behind the school buzzed with excitement. Teachers set up cones, relay stations, and obstacle courses. The Unity Challenge kicked off with loud music and school spirit. Names were drawn for teams, but Amir had arranged hers carefully, enlisting help from Coach Ramirez to pull strings. Camden, Hunter, and Mike stood in matching red shirts, arms crossed, already bored. Then they saw who their team leader was. Amir stepped out, cool and collected, clipboard in hand. She looked straight at Camden. "Today's challenge is about cooperation," she said. "But let's make it interesting. Final event. Obstacle relay. Winner gets to choose someone for the principal's leadership lunch next week. Losers clean the cafeteria for a week." Camden's eyes narrowed. "Deal," he said. 30 minutes later, the obstacle relay began. Each team had to complete a course that included sprinting, climbing, balance beams, and one twist. The final leg was a wheelchair push, with the student in the chair holding a baton. Camden scoffed when he saw it. "Seriously?" Amir smiled. "You're pushing her?" He blinked. "What?" She nodded toward the side of the field. Trinity, wearing a navy blue t-shirt, bruised elbow bandaged, expression calm but unreadable. Trinity rolled herself to the final station. Camden gritted his teeth. She's the final runner." Amir cut in. "Rules say one teammate has to ride, the other has to push. Let's go." The crowd stirred, teachers leaned in. Coach Ramirez blew the whistle. The relay took off. Camden, fueled by something between ego and confusion, ran his leg like his pride depended on it. He tagged Amir, who tagged Mike, and finally they reached the wheelchair station. Camden jogged up, panting, eyes darting. Trinity waited. He grabbed the handles, muttering under his breath, and began to push. But the course wasn't smooth. There were cones, bumps, uneven turf. At one point, Trinity calmly leaned left. "Slow down, you're tipping the chair." Camden adjusted. The crowd watched in near silence. Then came the final stretch. Amir and the others cheered. "Let's go." Trinity lifted the baton and held it high as they crossed the finish line. They won. For a split second, silence blanketed the field. Then came the applause, first from the teachers, then the students. It wasn't raucous or forced, it was genuine. Even some of Camden's own teammates stared at Trinity with new eyes. She didn't smile, didn't wave. She just sat there, her chest rising and falling, gripping the baton like a torch. Her eyes forward and clear. Camden stood behind her, hands on the wheelchair grips, too stunned to say anything. For the first time since that morning, he wasn't smirking. He was quiet, humbled, and maybe even ashamed. But Amir wasn't done. If you truly felt their story, drop a 1 in the comments below to show your support. Later that afternoon, back in the hallway where the fall had happened, Amir called a meeting with Miss Carter and Principal Gaines. She wasn't trying to get Camden suspended, that would be easy and pointless. What she wanted was harder. She wanted change. "People saw what happened," she said, standing in the office. "They saw a girl get knocked over, and nobody did anything. Nobody spoke up. That's what needs fixing." Principal Gaines, a stocky, greying man who had worked at Jefferson for nearly 2 decades, leaned forward, listening carefully. "What do you propose, Ms. Cross?" Amir exhaled slowly. "Give us 10 minutes at tomorrow's assembly. Let Trinity and I speak. Let us show them what it means to stand for someone else." The next morning, the school filed into the gym for the monthly character counts assembly. It was the usual routine. Announcements, student of the month, a speech from a teacher. The kids barely listened. But then Principal Gaines took the mic and cleared his throat. "Before we wrap up, do students have something they'd like to share?" A murmur ran through the bleachers. Amir and Trinity rolled out onto the court together. A hush fell. Trinity parked her chair near the center. Amir stood beside her, the microphone in hand. "Most of you saw what happened yesterday," Amir began, her voice steady. "Some of you laughed, some looked away, and some of you just didn't care. But here's the thing. Trinity didn't fall because she's in a wheelchair. She fell because someone thought it was okay to make her feel small." The room was dead quiet. Even the teachers looked tense, uncertain of where this was going. "We talk a lot about inclusion here," she continued. "We hang posters about kindness. But that doesn't mean much if we can't speak up when it counts." She glanced at Trinity, who took the mic next. "My name is Trinity Hayes," she said softly, but the mic carried her words across the bleachers. "I've been in a chair my whole life, and most days I don't think about it. But yesterday, I was reminded of what some people still see when they look at me. Weakness, a target, something to laugh at." Her voice cracked just slightly, but she kept going. "But here's what they didn't see. They didn't see the miles I've pushed through physical therapy. They didn't see my mom, who works 2 jobs to pay for my braces and repairs. They didn't see the nights I spent learning how to get up by myself after a fall." She paused, her gaze sweeping the bleachers. What they saw was a girl in a chair. But what I want you to see now is a girl who got back up. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was thick with emotion. A few kids shifted in their seats, one or two clapped quietly. Then more joined in, until nearly the whole gym was applauding, not out of pity, but respect. After the assembly, Camden found himself walking alone through the hallway. He'd never been ignored at this school, not once. But now eyes followed him with something new. Not fear, not admiration, just recognition. Like the mask had fallen. He didn't see Amir until he turned the corner near the library. She was sitting with Trinity, the two of them laughing softly over a book. For a moment, he considered walking the other way. But instead, he walked up slowly. He started, scratching the back of his neck. I didn't mean for things to go that far. I was just messing around. I didn't think she'd. Amir didn't blink. You didn't think. That's the only part of that sentence that matters. Camden opened his mouth, then closed it. He turned to Trinity. I'm sorry. For real. I was being a jerk. Trinity looked up at him, her face unreadable. I forgive you, she said finally. But I don't need you to be sorry. I need you to do better. Camden nodded awkwardly. Yeah, okay. He turned to leave, then paused. If you ever want help fixing that wheel, I'm pretty good with tools. Trinity gave a small shrug. We'll see. By the end of the week, something had shifted at Jefferson. It wasn't magic, it wasn't overnight. But the hallways felt different. A few more students stopped to hold open doors for Trinity. More kids started joining Amir and Trinity at lunch. Teachers began weaving conversations about accessibility and inclusion into their classes. Principal Gaines scheduled a new monthly forum called the Circular Space, where students could talk openly about what they faced, what they feared, and how the school could do better. Trinity and Amir were the first to speak at the inaugural meeting. Camden showed up too. He didn't speak, not yet, but he listened. That spring, Jefferson Middle School won a state award for inclusive programming. But to Trinity, the real award came quietly one morning in April, when she wheeled into the lunchroom and found her favorite table already reserved, with a small handmade sign taped to the chair, reserved for Trinity and Co. She smiled, not because she needed a seat, but because finally, people saw her as more than a girl in a wheelchair. She was Trinity, and she had risen. Summer came early that year in Birmingham. The air thick with the scent of cut grass and honeysuckle. The heat rising off sidewalks in shimmering waves. Trinity's days became filled with year-end testing, class picnics, and preparations for the middle school spring talent showcase, a beloved Jefferson tradition, where students from every grade displayed their creativity. There were always dancers, singers, comedians. But this year, something different stirred beneath the surface. The school wasn't just wrapping up a semester, it was closing a chapter. And at the heart of that change were two girls who had quietly, and without asking for permission, rewritten what strength looked like. Amir suggested they do something together for the showcase. Trinity hesitated at first. Performing on stage was something she'd never imagined herself doing. Not in front of the entire school. What would we even do? She asked one afternoon as they sat under the magnolia tree near the track field. Spoken word, Amir said. You write all the time. That poem you showed me about the sky, that was fire. Trinity shook her head. That was just for me. Amir tilted her head. Maybe. But maybe someone else needs to hear it too. They spent 2 weeks after school in the library, crafting their piece. They wrote about being seen and unseen, about rolling down hallways while others walked by, pretending not to notice. They wrote about voices that didn't yell but still shook walls. Amir brought rhythm, fire, movement. Trinity brought silence, grace, power. The day of the showcase arrived, and students packed the gymnasium in a blur of glitter, sneakers, and nervous energy. Parents sat along the back wall, many holding phones ready to record. Mr. Hargrove, the drummer teacher, adjusted the mix stand between acts, calling names like an MC at a county fair. When he said, next up, we've got Amir Cross and Trinity Hayes with an original spoken word performance. A ripple moved through the crowd. Amir stepped out first, eyes scanning the audience, lips tight with focus. Trinity wheeled behind her, back straight, hands folded in her lap. They positioned themselves center court, facing the crowd. Then Amir started, her voice clear and bold. They told me quiet girls don't start revolutions. That silence was softness, that stillness was weakness. But I've seen storms in still water, and I've watched thunder rolling on wheels. Trinity picked up the thread without pause, her voice softer but no less commanding. I've been invisible and unavoidable. I've been a punchline and a question mark. But now I am the period at the end of your assumptions. Their words laced back and forth, a call and response, a duet not of melody but of truth. The gym was silent, the kind of silence that felt earned, not forced. Not a cough, not a phone buzz, just the echo of two girls taking up space fully, unapologetically. When it ended, there was no instant eruption, just a beat, a breath. Then thunderous applause. Trinity's mother stood near the back, hands over her mouth, eyes brimming with pride. Even Principal Gaines wiped the corner of his eye with his sleeve. Camden, sitting with his younger brother near the bleachers, didn't clap right away. He just watched as Trinity wheeled off stage with Amir beside her, both of them laughing. Relaxed, whole. He turned to his brother, a sixth grader with the same square jaw and stubborn streak. You see that, man? That's real. The boy nodded. That was cool. Camden gave a slight nod. Yeah. It was. The last week of school passed in a blur. Locker cleanouts, final grades, yearbooks filled with signatures and inside jokes. Camden approached Trinity again in the library on the last day. I heard you're going to Washington High next year, he said, hands in his pockets. She glanced up from her book. Yeah. Special ed program's better there. He nodded. You're gonna crush it. She didn't say thank you, just smiled. That was enough. Amir would stay at Jefferson for 8th grade, and though they wouldn't see each other every day, the bond between them was set in stone. They made a pact. Check in every Sunday, keep writing, keep pushing, and never let silence settle where truth belonged. Over the summer, Trinity and her mother took a road trip to Selma, walking rolling the same Edmund Pettus Bridge where others before them had marched. Her mother told her stories of her grandfather, who had been part of the movement in '65, and how courage wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was a quiet girl in a wheelchair showing up day after day, refusing to shrink. Meanwhile, back in Birmingham, Principal Gaines invited Amir to lead the first Student Diversity Council for the next school year. He said the school needed students with vision, with voice, and more importantly, with follow-through. Amir accepted. She had plans already. New equity initiatives, peer mentorships, making sure no one else slipped through the cracks the way Trinity almost had. When fall came, both schools felt different. At Washington High, Trinity quickly found herself welcomed into a poetry club, where students used words like armor. She shared her spoken word piece at the first open. Micah Jr. with dyed green hair cried and hugged her after. I needed that, the girl whispered. At Jefferson, Amir led weekly student meetings in room 204. The group grew from 5 to 15 in a month. They hosted dialogue circles, conflict resolution workshops, and in the hallway above the lockers, the school put up a new mural designed by Amir, painted by art students. It showed two girls, one standing, one seated, both facing forward, eyes bold, unflinching. Above them, in big block letters, were the words, "Respect doesn't ask permission." No plaque, no dedication, just truth. Years later, long after the mural faded and lockers were replaced, the story lived on. Teachers would point to that hallway, telling new students. That's where it started, the courage, the change, the choice to stand or sit tall. And every now and then, when someone asked what happened that one spring afternoon when a girl in a wheelchair was knocked down and another girl stood up, someone would answer, "That's when we all learned what real strength looks like." Because real strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it rolls. Sometimes it waits. And sometimes, when the world is watching, it rises.